Chapter 11, Starland Red Maple Adventure Town. As the only place to enter the fallen forest, the flow of people has always been very large. Every day, a large number of adventurers enter the Red Maple Town to provide necessary supplies, and then break into the fallen forest without hesitation, wanting to have a rich future. On the contrary, there are also many adventurers who come out of the fallen forest. After healing and recuperation, they can relax and prepare for the next adventure. But today's Red Maple Town is full of people. I don't know how many adventurers escaped from the fallen forest. They are all covered in color. Many adventure teams have suffered heavy casualties. Grandma, why are these beasts so crazy today? They attacked us desperately. A sturdy man with a few blood holes on his body cursed carelessly. The adventurers next to were also puzzled. This fallen forest seems a bit wrong today. Those high-level monsters in the inner realm have walked out of the inner realm for the first time. It's abnormal. Besides, these high-level beasts are in hordes. They kill when they see humans, just like they are looking for someone in an organized way. What a evil! Is there someone who provokes the high-level monsters in the inner region and provokes the anger of the high-level monsters in the restaurant? A group of adventurers who licked blood with their knife edges were afraid to talk about the monster riot in the fallen forest. On a table not far from them, sitting on a table with a handsome face, listening to the adventure, the complaints of the readers are a little weird. Obediently, this heaven-splitting demon ape is really brutal and bloodthirsty. It must be revenge. In order to find my revenge, he has summoned countless high-level beasts in the inner domain to carry out a sweeping raid and revenge all the humans in the fallen forest. I have to run fast. Otherwise it must be discovered. That's right, the young man is Fengziken, who has just escaped from the underlings of the Demon Slayer. After leaving the Heaven Ripper ape, he decisively and quickly left the inner domain and flew towards the outer domain of the fallen forest. After flying for a long time, I finally flew out of the fallen forest and came to this small town of Red Maple next to the fallen forest. I was recuperating, and I saw countless adventurers escape from the fallen forest. Then I heard their conversation. There is no doubt that the only one who can mobilize so many high-level beasts is the sanctuary beasts in the core area of the fallen forest, and I just offended the sky-tearing demon ape. Don't even think about it and know that this must be its method. In other words, these adventurers are all affected by themselves. Thinking of this, Fengziken was a little embarrassed, coughed lightly, drank the fruit wine in his hand calmly, got up and left slowly. I am really embarrassed to stay here and listen to their scolding. After leaving the restaurant, Fengziken walked around the street for a while and then returned to the inn where he was staying. Lying on the bed, Fengziken sighed in comfort, and began to organize the collection in his mind. Information. This continent is called the Star Continent, and it has an extremely large area. Even if it is a sanctuary powerhouse flying in the air, it will take several years of effort to travel from the east coast of the East China Sea to the western mountain days on the west. You can imagine its size. Wide. The Star Continent also has a cultivation system, but it is not the chakra of the Naruto world, but magic and fighting spirit. Moreover, the history of the cultivation system of the Star Continent is much longer than that of the Naruto world, which is a full millions of years. Under the long years of multiplication, magic and fighting spirit can be said to be quite prosperous on the Star Continent, and it has also given birth to countless powerhouses in the Star Continent. Fengziken is no stranger to magic and fighting spirit, and these two words are often mentioned in novels on the Earth in previous lives. Fengziken deliberately went to find out, and found that the magic and fighting spirit on the Star Continent were roughly similar to those in the novel. From low to high, magicians can be divided into apprentice magicians, low-level magicians, intermediate magicians, high-level magicians, great magicians, holy magicians, also known as sanctuary powerhouses, magic saints, the Magister of the gods, also known as the powerhouse of the gods, the of law. Fighting cultivators are also known as warriors, and their cultivation level can be divided into 9 levels, from low to high. They are warrior, 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 great warrior, Wuzong, Wuzun, Wushan, and god of war. The 9 realms of the magician. But in addition to these two, there is a special system, that is the illusionist. The illusionist possesses extremely strong mental power, which should have belonged to the magician family, and belonged to the spiritual magician. However, in the remote ancient times, there were seniors who were able to study with great concentration, gather the best of hundreds of families, merge and converge, and developed a series of illusions, making the illusionist completely different from the magician and become a new training system. The strange ability of illusion is unpredictable, and it often attacks the enemy in a single thought. It is even more terrifying for some people with strong physical defenses and weaker mental willpower. Therefore, after tens of thousands of years, illusion the teacher was officially accepted by everyone, and it has a history of hundreds of thousands of years. And the illusionist also has 9 realms: apprentice illusionist, low-level illusionist, intermediate illusionist, high-level illusionist, great illusionist, 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 illusion god. Combining the two systems of magician and warrior, the order is clear. The background of the star continent is indeed stronger than that of the Naruto world. The amount of chakra now I am about is equivalent to the middle stage of the shadow stage. On this star continent, it is probably at the same level as the middle stage of the Magi stir, and it is also comparable to the middle stage of the martial artist and the magic the teacher's phantom is at the same level in the middle stage. Fengziken thought in his heart. However, my own ninjutsu has wind escape and spiral shuriken, physical skills can open the first 5 of the 8-door dungeon, and illusion skills are extraordinary, not to mention mastering the 2 major bloods of ice descent and kaleidoscope riding round eyes. In terms of true combat power, it is absolutely invincible at the same level, and even the general sanctuary early and mid-term powerhouses are not weak at all, and they will not be underestimated wherever they go. Fengziken showed a confident smile. According to his understanding, the sanctuary powerhouses are very high status, and they are generally 180-year-old elders. I am afraid that there are not many young people like him in the whole continent. Of course, he will not be proud of it. He has this strength thanks to the Hokage exchange system given to him by God, and Fengziken understands that this world has the existence of the gods, and the strength of the gods lies in Fengzi. Chen seems to be inferior to the 6 immortals in the Hokage world, that is not much different, and who can guarantee that the star continent will multiply for millions of years without a strong person who surpasses the gods. So no matter what, you must always maintain a low-key and peaceful heart, and you must maintain due respect to the world, so that you can go further. The 3-year training of the Fallen Forest has washed away some of the young and frivolous temperament of Fengziken. So that he has a mature heart not weaker than a real adult. I have to say that this is even more important than the strength he has achieved in the past 3 years. Okay, I don't want that anymore, I still think about where I should go next. Fengziken turned over and jumped out of bed with a carp, took out a map and spread it on the table. Fengziken looked at this map that he had bought at a high price, and couldn't help but slap his lips. Just such a map cost 1,000 gold coins. It's too dark. 1,000 gold coins are enough to make a family of 4 comfortable. It's been a year. Of course, this little money is really not worth mentioning for Fengziken, who has a large number of magic cores. Just selling a tier 5 or tier 6 magic core will cost thousands of gold coins, let alone a tier 7 and 8 high order magic core. Fengziken from the Fallen Forest has nothing else, that is, there are many magic cores, and there are no low-level ones, all of them are tier 6 to 7, tier 8 middle and high-level magic cores, which are very valuable. The mountains and rivers on the map are undulating, distinct, and faintly divided into 3 areas, which are clearly marked as the 3 empires, the Phalike Empire to the north, the Illusion Feather Empire to the southeast, and the Star Empire to the southwest. The fallen forest occupies an extremely wide area, almost across the southern border of the Xingyu Empire. Fengziken is now in the southern area of the Xingyu Empire. Fengziken moved his gaze to the southern part of the Xingyu Empire, and gradually pointed his finger on a heavy city, the City of Order. The City of Order. Fengziken muttered. This is one of the most important cities in the Xingyu Empire. Its economy and strength are hundreds of times greater than this red maple town. The population of the city is nearly 10 million. In any respect, it is the first-class city on the mainland. And in the City of Order, there is another place that makes Fengziken very interested: Tianxing Academy. Sky Star Academy is the highest institution on the Star Continent, and it is listed as the three major colleges in the mainland alongside the Falaise Magic Academy of the Falaise Empire and the Sky Fantasy Academy of the Magic Feather Empire. These three academies have strong teachers. The deans of the past generations of UU reading www.uukaungsha.com are all terrifying gods, and there are many sacred powers among the instructors. The peak strength of an academy is not inferior to the superpowers on the mainland. And the Star Academy with such powerful teachers has cultivated many experts in the sanctuary over the years, and it is the holy place for cultivation in the eyes of countless people on the Star Continent. Fengziken had no specific goals in the first place. Seeing that the City of Order is so famous, Tianxing Academy is one of the three major colleges in the mainland, so naturally I wanted to see it, and now decided the next destination: Order City. The next day, Fengziken got up and went to the City of Order. The City of Order was less than 100 miles away from the Fallen Forest, and only a few dozen miles away from the town of Hongfeng. It is said that the City of Order is still in charge. The important task of monitoring the core sanctuary beasts of the Fallen Forest. After all, the tide of beasts led by the sanctuary beasts is terrible. Less gossip. At such a distance, Fengziken was too lazy to call a carriage, and walked slowly towards the City of Order. In just 1 or 2 hours, Fengziken saw a magnificent city from afar. Even if it was far away, Fengziken could see how majestic the City of Order was. The huge city seems to be endless, and you can't see both sides at a glance. The large houses stretch for thousands of meters, which is just the tip of the iceberg in the City of Order. Before it was near, Fengziken had already felt a magnificent aura rushing toward his face. Like a prehistoric behemoth, the overwhelming terrifying coercion was invisibly pressed against him, shocking all the malicious people. What a City of Order! Fengziken looked at this magnificent city in shock, and sighed sincerely. At the same time, it also stimulated his inner desire. This is his first step towards the Star Continent, and it is also the starting point of his true fame in the world. Chapter 12, Lin Brothers and Sisters. As he approached the City of Order, Fengziken became more and more in awe. This city is too magnificent. The tall city walls are like steel pouring, shining silver black light under the sunlight, standing alone on the city wall. It is as if the ants are looking up at the elephant. It is hard to imagine how this was built. Fengziken came to the gate of the city with the flow of people, and looked up at the magnificent city wall that was not at the top, and fell into a long shock. This level of heavy city, let alone the world of Naruto, even the Earth China country with more than 5,000 years of brilliant culture is not there. Was sighing, Fengziken suddenly felt that someone patted himself on the shoulder, and then a kind and gentle voice came: "Is this brother the first time to come to the City of Order? How does it feel?" Fengziken turned his head to look, only to see a teenager who looked about his size was looking at him with a smile, and put a hand on his shoulder, appearing very intimate. Fuji-chen smiled and said, "It is indeed the first time I have come to the City of Order. To be honest, it is shocking. It is hard to imagine how such a magnificent city was built." The boy showed an unexpected look. "In fact, everyone who comes to the City of Order will be shocked by your brother. This City of Order is the top 3 super heavy city in the Star Empire. It is said that there are tens of thousands of people. Years of history, the accumulation of years is naturally extraordinary. By the way, what is the name of this brother? This young man is obviously a familiar one, and he naturally asked Feng Ziken's name in a few words. Under Feng Ziken. Feng Ziken was also not disgusted with this boy, and wanted to know more about the world, so he said his name happily, and then looked at the boy. The boy was also a sensible person, and he said readily, it turned out to be Brother Feng. In Xiaolin Ziken, Brother Feng also came to attend the annual enrollment ceremony of Star Academy. Enrollment ceremony. Tianxing Academy is enrolling students these few days. Feng Ziken was puzzled. He really didn't know when he first arrived. Brother Feng didn't know. Now, Lin Ziken was surprised. He was waiting for his sister. He happened to see Feng Ziken standing at the gate of the city with shocked face. Lin Ziken, who was born in a big family, could tell at a glance. It was the first time that Feng Ziken came to the city of order, and he couldn't see his depth from the peak of his magician's cultivation. Knowing that this was a young genius who wanted to make friends, he went forward to talk, thinking Feng Ziken went to the Tianxing Academy to take the exam just like himself. Brother Lin, can you tell me more about it? Feng Ziken said. He was originally interested in the Tianxing Academy, one of the 3 major academies in mainland China, and naturally wanted to know more. Lin Ziken naturally did not disagree, but when he was about to speak, a pleasant voice suddenly came from behind. Brother, who are you talking so vigorously with? When Feng Ziken heard the sound, he turned his head and looked at it, and his eyes suddenly filled with a fascinating color. I saw a beautiful girl standing beautifully not far away. The girl looked only 16 or 7 years old, and her face was as delicate as jade. The light in the eyes of the water double pupils is moving, and the long hair is like a waterfall, hanging straight to the girl's slender willow waist, bringing out a different kind of charm. Overwhelmingly beautiful, unparalleled appearance, nothing more than that. Feng Ziken couldn't help but float such a sentence in his heart. However, Feng Ziken was just subconsciously surprised for a moment, and then recovered his Qingming. Lin Ziken observed in secret, nodded in his heart, and his evaluation of Feng Ziken was much higher. Brother Feng, this is the younger sister Lin Zixuan. Lin Ziken stood up and introduced them to them at the right time. Sister, this is a young genius I just met, Feng Ziken, Brother Feng. Lin Zixuan's beautiful eyes flashed with surprise, but she quickly grabbed it, and nodded to Feng Ziken with restraint. Brother Feng. Feng Ziken also hurriedly responded. Lin Ziken laughed and said, okay, my sister is here too. Brother Feng, this is not the place to talk, let's talk about the admissions of Star Academy in Advanced City. Feng Ziken nodded and agreed, and the 3 of them immediately followed the flow of people into the city and walked into the city of order. Feng Ziken became more and more aware of how prosperous the city was. People come and go in the city, and the space is extremely wide. There are tall buildings and towers, and all kinds of large-scale shops along the streets have everything they have to do. Feng Ziken sighed in his heart. It really deserves to be the top 3 big cities in the Star Empire. It is really prosperous. After a while, Lin Ziken seemed to be very familiar with the city of order, and directly took Feng Ziken and Lin Zixuan into a very high-end restaurant. After sitting on the 2nd floor, the waiter in the restaurant hurriedly greeted with sharp eyes, how many guests would you like to order? Lin Ziken was a frequent visitor at first sight, and said directly, come to a table of real dragon banquet, plus 2 bottles of your best Beiwa wine. So be it. True dragon banquet. Feng Ziken was taken aback, wouldn't he? There are even such banquets? Lin Zixuan seemed to see the surprise in Feng Ziken's heart, and smiled. Brother Feng, the so-called True Dragon Feast actually refers to the highest-ranking banquet in the Minjiao restaurant, followed by the Dragon Feast, the Golden Snake Feast, and the Red Carp Feast. What? Feng Ziken suddenly realized, it turned out to be based on a saying from a restaurant. I thought this true dragon banquet was a banquet made of a real dragon. Linziken laughed and said, how is it possible that the dragon race is the top race on the star continent? There are countless strong ones. The true dragon is the king of the dragon race. I am afraid that the strength has reached the legendary realm of gods. Is the real dragon a banquet? Brother Feng is too funny. Lin Zixuan also pursed her mouth and smiled, that beauty is really moving and amazing. Feng Zixian also jumped in his heart. He hurriedly changed the subject and asked Lin Zixian, Brother Lin, now I can talk about the enrollment of Tianxing Academy. Lin Zixian nodded, as one of the three major colleges, Tianxing Academy has always been a holy place for countless people in mainland China. The Tianxing Academy will also hold an admissions event every year to select talented students. So every year there are a large number of magicians. Or the warrior came to the City of Order and tried to pass the test to enter the Star Academy to study, but very few students were successfully admitted. Today is the annual admissions exam for the Star Academy, and my little sister and I are here for the exam. Feng Zixian nodded, so, do you want to go to the Star Academy to see it? I heard that there are over 10 instructors in the Sky Star Academy, and the dean is even a powerhouse at the God domain level. If I enter the Sky Star Academy, I should have gained something. Lin Zixian looked at the pondering Feng Zixian, and couldn't help but persuade, Brother Feng, I think you are very strong and young, so why don't you go to the Star Academy with us? Feng Zixian thought for a while, nodded and said, all right, I'm fine anyway, just go and see. Lin Zixian was overjoyed and laughed, that would be great. It seems that we will be accompanied in the Star Academy in the future, sister, isn't it? Hearing his tone, it seemed that the three of them would definitely be able to. Entering the Star Academy, one of the three major academies on the mainland, Lin Zixuan nodded and smiled. At this time, the real dragon feast is also here. There are 36 dishes on the table. Each dish is exquisite, full of color, fragrance, and appetite. The three of them talked for a long time, and they were all very congenial, and they were very happy to enjoy the delicious real dragon feast. Feng Zixian picked up a piece of meat that didn't know what kind of monster it was and put it in his mouth. The ultimate delicacy made him applaud in his heart. During the 3 years in Fallen Forest, he felt like a savage. Fire-grilled meat of Warcraft, drinking mountain spring water, where have you tasted such a delicacy? Right now, he let go of the big lumps of fruit on his belly. Compared, Lin Zixian and Lin Zixuan's food appearance is obviously better, especially Lin Zixuan, which tastes very elegant, and Feng Zixian is a little embarrassed to see it. After eating, their relationship has obviously improved a lot. Because Lin Zixian is 1 year older than Feng Zixian simply called him Brother Linear. Lin Zixian also changed his name to Zixian, and Miss Lin Zixuan's family was still called Brother Feng, but his tone is obviously more familiar. The three of them walked out of Minjai restaurant together, and instead of wandering around, they went directly to the Star Academy. Tianxing Academy is located in the central area of the City of Order. It occupies a very large area. There are thousands of teaching buildings, not to mention various training places. Feng Zixian and the others came to the main entrance of Tianxing Academy and looked at the test-taking candidates in the growth team. They couldn't help but look at each other. There are too many people. Facing this situation, Lin Zixian smiled mysteriously, Zixian, don't worry, we don't have to fight with them, let's go another way. Another way? Isn't the registration there? Is there any way? Feng Zixian was confused. You reading www.uukangsha.com. Lin Zixuan smiled lightly, Brother Feng, this registration point is just for the preparation of ordinary candidates. Even if you pass here, you will only become a junior student of Tianxing Academy, our cultivation base will naturally go higher. Grade cultivator. Feng Zixian just wanted to talk, Lin Zixian seemed to know what he was going to say, and said, the students in the Tianxing Academy are also ranked. Generally, they only recruit great magicians under the age of 18, that is, great martial arts and great masters. Students of the illusionist level only enroll 100 a year, and they earn lower grade classes. As for the more talented students, those who reach the first level of the wizard at the age of 18 will be admitted to the senior class. In addition, there is a special class that only enrolls the 18-year-old wizard. It's rare, usually less than a few in a year. Fengziken is clear. Are students with different cultivation talents divided into different classes? It's also reasonable. Linziken took Fengziken to the side entrance of the Tianxing Academy, and there was a registration point there, but there were obviously fewer people here, only a dozen. Fengziken looked around and found that there were no other mentors except for an old man with a long beard sitting in a chair with his eyes closed. The sign on the side read "Formal Assessment at 3 o'clock in the afternoon." The dozen or so people who came that morning were all waiting quietly, and Linziken also took Fengziken and his sister to rest under the big tree. "It seems that the assessment has not yet started, let's wait first." Linziken shrugged and said. Fengziken naturally doesn't have any opinions. "When I was bored, I saw the 4 characters Tianxing Academy engraved on the city wall. After watching it for a while, his face suddenly changed." Chapter 13, Tianxing wrote, "If the 4 characters of Sky Star Academy have spirituality." After reading it for a long time, Fengziken only felt a terrifying and fierce pressure smashed down like Mount Tai, and the original 4 characters of Star Academy seemed to disappear. In order to countless mouths of peerless divine front, the sword light shot at him violently. "This is illusion. No, it is mental power. Such a powerful spiritual power." Fengziken was horrified in his heart, and quickly opened the writing wheel. "No, this mental power is too strong." The kaleidoscope writes round eyes, open. Suddenly, the 3 lacquered gouaches in the blood-red pupils spun extremely quickly, interconnecting them into a shuriken shape, which is a kaleidoscope. Right round eyes. The kaleidoscope writing wheel eye is indeed Fengziken's strongest trump card. He feels a burst of clarity while the pupils are running. The monster blood-colored pupils turn and sweep away, and the countless sharp swords suddenly shattered like glass. For nothingness. Fuji-chen breathed a sigh of relief, and concealed the kaleidoscope writing wheel eyes, and couldn't help but fear, such a terrifying spiritual coercion. If there is no kaleidoscope writing wheel eyes, then I would be embarrassed. Linzikshuan noticed a slight strangeness in Fengziken, and asked with concern, "Brother Feng, are you okay?" Linziken also turned his head and watched Fengziken breathe a little bit quickly, and said hurriedly, "I forgot to tell you just now. You can read the 4 characters of Tianxing Academy on the wall, but don't keep staring at it. Rumor has it that Master Dean personally engraved it, and it contains Master Dean's terrifying sword intent. If you keep staring at it, you will easily be obliterated by that terrifying sword intent. It is the most dangerous. Did the Dean personally engraved it? No wonder there will be such a strong mental power." Fengziken suddenly, the Dean is a powerhouse in the gods of the continent, and it is not surprising that he has this strength. Not far away, the bearded old man lying on the seat woke up at some point. At this moment, he was staring at Fengziken intently, his eyes full of surprise. This little baby can actually get rid of the Dean's sword-inspired coercion on its own, and can also fight back to break through the coercive coercion. Is it because of those weird eyes? The bearded old man concealed himself and saw the wind at a glance. Ziken's weird eyes are extremely powerful bloodlines. I'm afraid he can enter the ranks of holy grade bloodlines. Sure enough, the mainland is going to be chaotic, and enchanting will come out. In the past few years, there have been many geniuses on the mainland. Tianjiao, Hong Kong, there are 16-year-old people with the heart of martial arts. There are 5 magical talents. Now another one, the power of the bloodline of the pupil type holy grade that has never been seen before, and this child is only 18 years old, but even the old man feels a trace of danger. His strength is unfathomable, Is it really a troubled world? This little baby is extremely talented and has talents in God's domain. He must stay in my Star Academy. The other two academies have had enchanting wizards early. Although the four of my Star Academy are all talents, they still have to stay a little bit. There is not a slight difference, there is no enchanting wizard that can really compare with one. If this continues, my Star Academy will be the bottom of the three academies exchange competition in the near future. It is such a shame that I cannot bear it. Thinking of this, the bearded old man looked up at the sky, and suddenly stood up. As the only examiner of the Star Academy here, his every move was naturally noticed by everyone present, and immediately more than a dozen long-awaited students they all stood up. Linziken also hurriedly pulled Fengziken. Ziken, it's about to begin. Fengziken nodded and looked at the bearded old man, only to find that the old man was also looking at him, and he was taken aback. However, the long-bearded old man quickly looked away, looked at everyone present, and said leisurely, "This time my Star Academy enrollment is divided into general enrollment and special enrollment. The general enrollment is at the main entrance and only those under the age of 18. The number of students at the first level of the Great Magician is limited, with only 100, and here is the location of special admissions. The admissions assessment here is different from ordinary admissions. It is not about testing talents and testing realm. The assessment of special admissions is only one, that's actual combat." At the end of the speech, the old bearded man's original inattentive tone suddenly became sharp. Fengziken was shocked. Regardless of talent, regardless of realm, he only focuses on actual combat. This rule is really unusual. Looking at the other people again, they all looked calm. Obviously they knew it a long time ago, and they had great confidence in themselves. The long-bearded old man continued, "This college only enrolls students under the age of 18. You should know that since you come here, but the old man still has to do the test before the assessment. Now I invite you to decide to conduct the assessment. 19 people line up one by one to test the bone age." Linziken whispered, "This first level is to test the bone age. The experienced examiner touches the hand bone to determine whether it meets the age limit. The examiners are extremely powerful sanctuary experts who can accurately measure the age of the bones. The age is inferred from the bones. I heard that it can be accurate to the number of days. Even if it exceeds 1 day, it cannot participate in the assessment. It is very strict." Fengziken was a little surprised. The old man with long beard is a strong sanctuary. Linzixuan nodded and said, "He is a strong sanctuary, and not a general sanctuary strong. I am afraid it has reached the middle and late stages of the sanctuary. Will not be the sole examiner for special admissions." Fengziken's heart slapped his tongue. It seems that this famous Star Academy from the mainland is indeed rich in teachers, and any examiner is a strong sanctuary. 3 people including Fengziken and others lined up obediently to test the bone age. The elderly with long beards pressed their right palms one by one to measure the age of their bones. Without exception, they were 18 or 17 years old, all qualified. Soon it was Fengziken and the others. The first person to test the bone age was Linziken. The long-bearded old man held Linziken's outstretched right hand and said after a little inspection, "The bone age is 18 years old, qualified, 1. Fengziken stepped forward and stretched out his right hand. I don't know if it was his illusion. He seemed to see the old man with long beard light up, and he held his hand tightly. After a long time, he smiled and said, "Well, 17 years old, not bad." Others can't help being surprised, "Not bad." This is the only compliment that the examiner has said so far. Is there anything different about this kid? Fengziken is also a bit inexplicable, "Not bad." Is it my age? But there were also several 17-year-old examines in front of him who didn't see him smile. Strange. The next test of Linzixuan made him even more puzzled. Bone age, 16 years old. Well, the bone age test is completed, and all meet the requirements. The old bearded man did not say a word, and ended the first level directly. Regarding age, Zixian is younger than herself, but the examiner didn't smile at all, but facing me. Feng Zixian was strange in her heart, and the others were equally puzzled, but they didn't say anything, and waited for the formal examination. At first, I just remembered Feng Zixian in my heart. The old man with long beard began to speak of his name at this time. Everyone present is qualified to participate in the assessment. I am the only examiner for your assessment. My name is Gu Chen. You can call me Chen Lao. The 19 people respectfully saluted, and said, Old Chen. The sanctuary powerhouses are definitely worthy of the respect of their young geniuses. After all, although they are extremely talented, they can break through the sanctuary in the future. 2 or 3 are extremely difficult. Old Chen said with satisfaction, very good, this time the assessment is the same as before. It's a journey to the stars. Those who have passed the first 3 levels can enter the senior class of my Star Academy, those who have passed the 6th level can enter my Star Sacred class. Except for Feng Zixian, all examines know this rule. UU reading www.uukangshu.com. Lin Zixian looked at Feng Zixian, who was at a loss, and hurriedly came out to literacy. The special assessment is to go to Tianxing Road. It has always been like this. Tianxing Road has many levels. One level is more difficult than one level. In the 3rd level, at least one must have the strength of the mages, and then you can enter the senior class, and the 6th level must have the strength of the mages to pass, and you can pass this before the age of 18. It means that you have the 1st level strength of the Magi Stir, and it also means that you have the potential to become a sanctuary strong, so you can enter the extremely important sacred class of the Star Academy and be trained as a future sanctuary strong. That's kind of interesting. Feng Zixian knew it, and couldn't help expecting that he could pass a few levels. Looking at the calm people underneath, Chen Lao showed a playful smile, and said leisurely, at the same time, the quota for the gods class is open for this assessment. As long as you are strong enough, you can enter my Tianxing class. Sky Star God class. The people who were originally peaceful underneath suddenly boiled over, and the God's Domain training camp that had always been approved by the dean, recommended by the instructor, was opened. Not to mention other people, even Lin Zixian and Lin Zixuan, who have always been calm, are excited. That is the Tianxing Shenbane, known as the God's Domain training camp. In history, more than 8 CDs that can enter the God's Domain have become the legendary God's Domain strong. Even if it doesn't become a God's realm, it's an invincible, terrifying powerhouse in the sanctuary. This time, the Star Academy has opened up the quota for the gods. Zixian, you must fight hard later. Entering the gods is equivalent to getting them in advance. The pass to the top powerhouse on the mainland. You must not miss it. God's Domain training camp. Over 80% of the students have become powerhouses in God's Domain. It's crazy. Feng Zixian was also taken aback. This Tianxing Academy really deserves to be one of the highest universities in the mainland. It is unfathomable. Chapter 14, Backsword Boy. After knowing that they are strong enough to enter the legendary God's Realm training camp, the dozens of people preparing for the assessment are all gearing up, eager to try, and their eyes are full of excitement. Feng Zixian is also a little interested, not because he is very likely to become a strong in the realm of God in the future when he enters the training camp of the realm of God. He has the absolute confidence in becoming a strong in the realm of God, who has the Hokage exchange system and the outstanding talent of chakra. What's interesting is that the God's Domain training camp claims to be able to cultivate the power of God's Domain, so there must be some tricks. And the Star Academy, which has extremely large training resources, should also be able to find a large number of energy blocks, providing Feng Zixian with a large number of exchange points. For him, the exchange point is strength and everything. Successfully provoked the fighting spirit of everyone. Chen Lao was very satisfied. Yu Guang looked at Feng Zixian, and saw him also moved, and couldn't help but smile in his heart. Who did he say the quota for the God's Domain training camp is for? It's not for this little baby. What qualifications of the 19 people present, as the sanctuary powerhouse, can't tell? There are only 5 or 6 who can enter the sanctuary training camp, and the only qualified to enter the sanctuary training camp is Fengziken alone. Fengziken didn't know that this precious place in God's Domain training camp was specially prepared for him by old Chen. At this time, he was looking a little dignifiedly at a young man with a sword back that just came not far away. This person is not simple. Sword-backed youth also seems to have come to participate in the special enrollment. He has a cold expression, and his temperament is cold like winter, which is daunting. Came to the door, the young man with the sword-backed sword directly raised his head and looked at the 4 characters Sky Star Academy engraved on the city wall, and a hint of eagerness appeared in his eyes. Old Chen also saw this young man. When he saw him, he stared at the sword characters engraved by the dean. He couldn't help but sighed. It was another stunned young man. Are the characters engraved by the dean himself so beautiful? Looking under the sanctuary for a long time will obliterate the will, and there is little possibility of progress. It seems that we are going to rescue him again. Not everyone can break free with their own strength. Before he finished speaking, Mr. Chen's eyes widened, and he couldn't help but explode. Damn, this kid unexpectedly, this face slapped is coming too soon. I saw that facing the pressure of the sword intent left by the dean, the sword-backed young man was not afraid, and a shocking sword intent burst out of his body, like a horned dragon rushing into the sky, and suddenly hit the sword left by the dean. Italian coercion. There seemed to be a muffled noise between the heavens and the earth. The sword-backed young man couldn't help backing up a few steps. His face changed slightly. Dean Tianxing is worthy of the long-known sword on the mainland, and the realm of Kendo is really unfathomable, just a leftover sword intent. Pressure can make me go all out. However, even though it was downwind, the sword-backed young man's eyebrows were filled with infinite fighting spirit. A golden sword light flashed in his eyes. He did not retreat but moved forward, stepping forward, and his whole body vigorously exploded, impressively dazzling. Golden Grudge. Sword God Bloodline, open. The sword-backed youth yelled softly in his heart, and his dark eyes gradually turned gold, and a stronger sword intent rushed into the sky, once again hitting the pressure of the sword intent. The result of this collision is quite different. After the strengthening of the sword god's bloodline, the sword intent of the sword-backed boy is obviously stronger by a notch, and the sharpness is unmatched. The sword is above the pressure of the sword intent to cut it into force. 2 halves, completely disintegrated. Fengziken narrowed his eyes as he watched this scene, and his strength is extraordinary. Are those golden pupils and brilliant gold fighting spirit the so-called power of blood on this continent? It's almost like the blood succession boundary in the Naruto world. Compared with Fengziken's little knowledge, Chen Lao is different. He was slightly impressed when he saw the brilliant golden fighting spirit. When the young man with the sword backed his eyes also turned golden, Chen Lao finally recognized the blood. The bottom of the force is thinner. This, is it the power of the bloodline of the sacred pinnacle, the bloodline of the sword god? So this young man is a member of that clan. Old Chen was horrified, and even the clan that had been hidden for thousands of years appeared. Is this a sign? The young man with the sword back restrained his golden vindictiveness and concealed his golden pupils. After a short rest, he walked over the dust and said directly, I want to enter the God's Realm training camp. Old Chen hasn't spoken yet, and there are people below who are dissatisfied. What do you mean? We all have to start the assessment before you come here slowly, and you will enter the God's Domain training camp as soon as you speak. Too arrogant. Hey, boy, stop being arrogant. Is the God's Realm training camp that you can enter if you want? We are all still here waiting for the assessment. You are the last one to come. Why are you? Standing Fengzi, a blue-haired boy not far from Chen, yelled, obviously very dissatisfied with the tone of the sword-backed boy. The sword-backed boy turned around and coldly glanced at the blue-haired boy, his eyes flashed and the sword intent was released instantly, condensed into a bunch of blue-haired boy. The blue-haired boy was struck by lightning. He staggered and almost fell to the ground. He raised his eyes and looked at the sword-backed boy in horror. How strong is he at the same age? If you really want to do it yourself, a magician will not be killed by him. Thinking of this, the blue-haired boy didn't dare to say a word anymore, and bowed his head not to look at him. The young man with the back sword looked at Chen Lao again, and said again, but this time the meaning was quite different, the assessment has not yet started, I want to join. Chen always touched his long beard and said, well, it hasn't started, you are just in time. Sword-backed boy nodded, did not say anything, stood aside and said nothing. Chen coughed and said, 20 of you who are going to participate in the Tianxing Road assessment, come with me. Then he turned and walked into the gate. The young man with the sword-backed sword followed closely, and Feng Zikan and others followed. Chen Lao led the way and walked left and right. After several laps before stopping, he looked at the door entirely made of bronze and said, this is the entrance to Tianxing Road. You will enter from here later and start your assessment. After speaking, Chen Lao clapped his palms, and the heavy bronze door moved in response and opened slowly. It is worth mentioning that if you want to enter the God's Domain training camp, you must pass the 9th level at least, otherwise there is a little hope. Nothing. Of course, medicines and the like are not allowed during the assessment process. Everything can only rely on your own strength. There will be full monitoring on Star Road. The senior management of my Star Academy is watching you, so don't let yourself be wrong. Once you find out, then the Star Academy will never welcome you again. Old Chen added. Feng Zikan and others listened quietly to Mr. Chen talking about some rules of the assessment. After a while, Mr. Chen stopped, looked at the sky, and said, the assessment begins, you can go in. The sword-backed young man was fearless, strode directly into the bronze gate and walked into Tianxing Road. Feng Zikan greeted Lin Zikan and Lin Zixuan to follow him. The rest of the people also rushed into Tianxing Road and began to break into the sky. Road journey. Old Chen looked at everyone who started the assessment and couldn't help but smile. The quality of the candidates this time is really high. From his perspective, everyone can pass the 3rd level and enter the senior class of the Star Academy, and enter, there are probably as many as 5 or 6 in the sanctuary training camp. Of course, what excites him most is Feng Zikan and Sword-backed boy, who are qualified to enter the God's Domain training camp. Inside the door is a deep passage made entirely of bronze, extending forward, without knowing where the end is. The sword-backed young man took the lead and walked in the forefront. Feng Zikan looked at the sword-backed young man who didn't say a word in front, and wanted to ask his name or something else, but he felt that this was not a place to talk, so he had to give it up. Soon, Feng Zikan and his team walked along the passage to the first pass on Tianxing Road. It was a huge ring, about 100 meters long and wide, and the opposite of the ring was a passage entrance, which should be the same as the second pass. After Feng Zikan and others came to the ring, a beam of light suddenly lit up on the ring, the light dissipated, and a light and shadow appeared on the ring. This is the magical clone of a sanctuary powerhouse, probably possessing the power of a great magician. You can only enter the 2nd level if you defeat it. The voice of Old Chen came from someplace above the ring, echoing in Feng Zikan. Wait for someone's ear. Magic clone? Is it similar to the technique of own shadow clone? Feng Zikan looked at the light and shadow on the ring with interest, and thought in his heart. The boy with backsword was the first to enter the ring, and Guangying murmured a word, suddenly summoning a huge rock to hit the boy with backsword. The young man with a sword on his back is not surprised. Yu reading www.uukangshu.com backhand pulled out the divine sword behind, the sword light flashed it directly and cut it in half. The rest of the prestige was still terrifying, and the light and shadow were instantly cut into pieces, and the victory was easy. Everyone on the field looked at the sword-backed youth with a lot of pressure. This strength might have reached the realm of sword sovereign. Sword-backed youth, no matter what other people think, after defeating the light and shadow, he walked directly into the passage and walked towards the second level. He did not want to stay and see how the rest of the people fight. I am afraid that in his opinion, no one here is qualified to be his opponent. Feng Zichen thought in his heart, and at the same time, he was looking forward to his shocked expression after he waited to catch up with him. Lin Zichen smiled and said, "That kid is really unpleasant." He went straight away. It seems that we have to speed up. Otherwise, if his strength does not exceed us too much, it will be unsightly. Feng Zichen and Lin Zixuan nodded in agreement, and started their assessment. The light and shadow appeared again, and Feng Zichen came to the stage, facing the light and shadow with only the power of the great magician. He didn't bother to use ninjutsu, and went directly to Konoha. Defeat it? The same defeat made other examines look at Feng Zichen's eyes differently. Although the strength of the great magician is stronger than that of everyone present, it is still a bit difficult to defeat by one move. A powerhouse like Lin Zichen, the peak of the wizard, also used 3 fire magic to defeat it, even more so for others, and it generally took a lot of time. And Lin Zixuan, a 16-year-old girl, actually has the cultivation of a magician, and her combat power is extremely good. She also passed the first test in a few strokes, and they were stunned. Feng Zichen, who passed the first level, went to the second level together. The sword-backed boy has been ahead of them for quite a while. I wonder if they have passed the second level. Chapter 15, Breakthrough. Passing through the deep passage made of bronze, Feng Zichen and others arrived at the second level, which was the same huge arena as the first level. Huh? The sword-backed boy is not here. It seems that this level has not brought him obstruction. Feng Zichen couldn't help but said when he saw that there was no one on the ring. Actually, he himself can get through the level faster, but he doesn't want to leave Lin Zichen and the others alone. Lin Zichen heard it, and couldn't help gritting his teeth. That guy is really capable, is he so fast? The other 16 people also came to the second stage one after another. At this time, a white light rose again on the ring, and a grudge clone appeared in front of them. Same as the first level, this is a vindictive clone of the sanctuary strong, but the strength is already at the peak of the great martial artist, and you can pass the second level to the third level. Chen Lao's voice sounded again. The great warrior peak. That is the strength equivalent to the peak of the great mage. It seems to be much stronger than the first level. Everyone is a little surprised, but the second level is already the peak strength of the great mage, then the third level will not be the strength of the wizard, right? What about the sixth level? Even the ninth level necessary to enter the God's Domain training camp? Now these genius teenagers can finally feel soberly how difficult it is to enter the God's Domain training camp. Feng Zichen looked at the grudge clone on the stage, then looked at Lin Zichen's unhappy eyes, and couldn't help but smile. Brother Lin, you can't catch up with the sword-backed young man, but you don't want to expose the true nature so early. The strength is nothing. Lin Zichen looked at Feng Zichen in amazement. Brother, you have seen it long ago. As the young master of the Lin family of the 3 super families in the Star Empire, Lin Zichen naturally has hidden strength, but he has never I just used it, but I didn't expect this Feng brother who had just met for a long time to know it. Lin Zixuan, who has been quiet and silent all the time, couldn't help but look at Feng Zichen. The light in her beautiful eyes was like a dream. Feng Zichen smiled and nodded, be aware of it. Since Brother Lin wants to catch up with that person as soon as possible, let's go through the level as fast as possible. This can also save some time. It seems that Big Brother Feng is also invisible, Lin Zixuan suddenly said, her beautiful eyes full of smiles. Feng Zichen smiled a little embarrassingly. Lin Zichen thought for a moment, and agreed with Feng Zichen's opinion. Well, in that case, I won't hide my clumsiness anymore. Let's clear the level as quickly as possible. Speaking of Linziken, he was the first to enter the ring. His black hair instantly turned blue while walking, and his temperament had also changed significantly. Linziken, who was originally a fire magician, gave people a fiery and warm feeling. But it was filled with a deep cold, but there was a faint trace of hot in the cold, which was extremely strange. The fighting spirit clone sensed that someone was coming up, and rushed directly to Linziken quickly. A pair of fists surged with fighting spirit, and rushed towards Linziken. Linziken's face was calm, his right hand stroked the ring of his left hand, and a slender blue staff appeared out of thin air. Linziken held the staff and knocked on the ground, a faint blue ring of fire violently spread around him. Directly pushed back the grudge clone. And the faint blue flame was contaminated with the fighting spirit clone, and it froze instantly, freezing the fighting spirit clone on the ring. The temperature of this flame is surprisingly low, and it can freeze people. It seems to be a very special flame. Is this also a kind of bloodline power? Sure enough, it's powerful, so strange. Fengziken said silently in his heart. The vindictive clone was frozen. Linziken directly condensed a faint blue flame sword, and shot away like lightning. The vindictive clone was unexpectedly pierced by a sword and dissipated on the spot. Linziken put away the blue staff and walked off the ring. In less than 10 seconds, he killed the Duki clone with the peak power of the Great Mage. This strength also shocked the other teenagers present, making them feel a lot of pressure. When he came to Fengziken and Linzikshuan, Linziken smiled and said, "How about it, fast enough?" Fengziken gave a thumbs up. This strength definitely has the qualification to attack the sanctuary training camp. Next up was Linzikshuan. After the quietly and well-behaved girl was fully deployed, her black hair turned into a dark purple, and the flame she controlled turned into a more advanced dark purple. The extremely hot temperature connected to the audience. Fengziken could clearly feel it. Also took out the staff from the space ring on the right hand. Linzikshuan directly released a 7-level magic flame storm and burned the vindictive clone into nothingness, winning the battle. Everyone in the audience was shocked once again. This little beauty is only 16 years old, and she has such a powerful strength. How can we, who are 17 or 18 years old but also a magician, feel so embarrassed? The little beauty hurriedly walked off the ring, with a hint of joy on her beautiful little face, looking at Linziken, and two of them seemed to say, "Look, I'm also very good." Linziken and Fengziken are naturally not stingy with some compliments, and Linzikshuan feels a little embarrassed when they say that they like it. Fengziken is the only one who has not passed. Linziken looked at Fengziken with a smirk and said, "Ziken, if he comes back in more than 10 seconds, he will be punished." Fuji Chen smiled. 10 seconds. Shouldn't it take that long? Walking onto the ring, the grudge clone rushed over mechanically, and Fengziken had a few seals in his hands, Lei Dunchi and Diao sharp spear. Fengziken suddenly joined the of his right hand and turned into sword fingers, and a long lightning beam quickly extended out between the flashing lights, piercing into the chest of the Dochi clone, and with a sudden shock, the Dochi clone broke and turned into the fluorescent dots disappeared. Stepped off the ring and looked at Linziken and Linzikshuan, who were stunned. Fengziken couldn't help but smile, and touched Linziken on his shoulder, and Nayu said, "How about? Is there 10 seconds? Linziken screamed in his heart, "There are no 10 seconds, this is not even 5 seconds, this girl is really unfathomable." Faced with these three abnormalities, it took less time than one, and the others were already numb. Both of them are 17 or 18 years old, the difference in strength is too big. Fengziken and the three of them laughed for a while and then walked towards the passage of the third pass together, leaving the 16 teenagers fighting hard to face the grudge clone. At the location of the third stage, on the same huge arena, the sword-backed young man faced a transparent light and shadow, closed his eyes to resist the attack of illusion, and burst out from the sky, and instantly wiped out the magical clone whose strength reached the realm of illusion. For the martial artist, the illusionist is really the most difficult to deal with. This is just a clone of the Phantom sect in the early stage, which can stop me for a moment. It seems that the subsequent levels can't be careless. Walk through the 4 gates. However, just 1 second before the young man with backsword was about to step into the passage, a rush of footsteps sounded from the entrance of the second pass, making him a little surprised to stop. Someone was able to keep up with his steps. This strength is not bad. It seems that there are still some capable candidates in that batch of candidates. On the other side, in order to catch up with the sword-backed boy, the 3 of Fengziken could not help but ran quickly in the passage. The moment they rushed out of the passage, they saw a figure standing in front of the passage leading to the 4th pass on the other side. Sword-backed boy. Linziken is overjoyed, but he has caught up, and it seems that he has no use of his blood in vain. The sword-backed boy paused for a while, then moved his feet again and entered the 4th pass. Came very fast, but you still pass the obstruction of the 3rd level illusion clone. If you can really catch up with me in the 4th level, then it is really amazing. Go. Fengziken secretly said in his heart. It seems that this 3rd level is still a bit difficult, and the sword-backed boy also stayed here for a while. Linziken saw that the young man with the backsword just glanced at the 3 of them and entered the 4th level. He couldn't help but gritted his teeth. Come over this level as fast as possible, let that cold guy see our strength. Linzikshuan nodded. You reading www.uukaungsha.com. Fengziken was also aroused. A little bit of comparison, and the aggressive temperament that was sleeping in his body awakened. He stood up and said, "Let me start this time." Linziken knew that he was indeed stronger than himself, so he agreed. "Okay, Ziken, you are the first one. You must rush over as fast as you can, and let that kid be surprised by the 4th level. Brother Feng, come on." Linzikshuan encouraged, her big eyes full of expectation. Don't worry." Fengziken smiled and nodded, and quickly walked onto the ring. At the same time, a pair of dark eyes instantly turned blood red, and there were 3 dark black gojade in the blood-colored pupils, which were the eyes of the riding wheel. The fastest way to deal with the illusion avatar is naturally to open the riding wheel eye. As the best riding wheel eye in the Naruto world, it has strong illusion resistance by nature, and can even directly rebound some illusions that are not very strong. Go back. Illusory avatar started to work, and without any signs, an illusion fell on Fengziken, trying to pull him into the world of illusory. However, since the Xuanyan was opened, it showed that Fengziken really wanted to solve the battle quickly. The illusion attack was directly dismantled during the operation of the pupil of the Xuanyan, and at the same time, Fengziken disappeared in place with a blinking technique. When he reappeared, he was in front of the avatar. A round of azure chakra ball was condensed in his hand, and it was printed on the chest of the avatar. The powerful power directly blasted it into fragments, flying in all directions little by little. 3rd level, pass. The whole process was like going with the clouds and flowing water. In less than 10 seconds, a magical clone that had reached the early stage of the fantasy sect was strongly beheaded by Fengziken. The speed made the brothers and sisters Linziken sluggish for a long time, too cruel. Chapter 16, Fengziken and Jianwuji. Looking at Fengziken with a relaxed look on his face, Linziken said silently, "It seems that I still underestimated the strength of Brother Feng. This phantom power clone probably has the strength of the phantom sect. Your kid is still so strong. Good job." Fuji-Chen pointed to his riding wheel, and smiled. "In fact, it is still due to the power of my bloodline. Part of its ability is related to illusion, so it has some resistance to some not very strong illusion. Since there is a lot of bloodline power in this world, Fengziken also took the opportunity to call his own bloodline power. After all, bloodline power and bloodline power are actually very similar. In fact, Linziken and Linzikshuan also discovered the abnormal changes in Fengziken's eyes, and they also suspected that it was the power of blood. It's just that the power of a person's blood has always been taboo. They are not easy to ask, and now Feng Zixian has said them. There is no scruples. Lin Zixuan looked curiously at the blood-red pupils with a demon-like beauty, and couldn't help but say, Brother Feng's pupil-like bloodline power is very rare, is it only you have it? Feng Zixian was taken aback, and quickly replied, I think it should not be. There are still many eyes like me in a very distant place, but, few people know it. Lin Zixuan's beautiful eyes flashed a ray of contemplation, and he didn't ask anything. After all, the power of the bloodline is a person's greatest trump card. If you continue to ask, it will be a little unsure. Lin Zixian patted Feng Zixian on the shoulder, and said excitedly, Brother, it's only half a minute, that arrogant guy must be in the 4th level, go, catch up with him, and surpass him. Feng Zixian hesitated, then you. Lin Zixuan's smart voice sounded, Big brother Feng, don't worry about us. Although my brother and I can't solve the battle as quickly as you, there is still no problem in dealing with the fantasy section. Lin Zixian also said with a smile, after all, the goal of our siblings is the sanctuary training camp. This 3rd level can't stop us. Feng Zixian nodded, showing a confident smile, don't worry, I will surpass him to show you. After speaking, he quickly rushed into the passage. Lin Zixian and Lin Zixuan watched Feng Zixian's figure disappear in their eyes, they couldn't help but a wave of confidence in their hearts, confidence in Feng Zixian, but also confidence in themselves. In the passage, Feng Zixian released his speed and ran towards the 4th pass. With his shadow-level strength, the movement speed was naturally extremely fast, as if a gust of wind blew by. Feng Zixian suddenly found a sword mark in front of his eyes, which was conspicuously carved on the bronze wall. This sword mark was just imprinted, is it left by the young man with the sword back? There are traces of his battle left here, that is to say. Feng Zixian's mind was swiftly running, and an answer emerged, from here, the passage is not safe anymore. Almost the moment he thought of this layer, 2 extremely sharp arrows popped up on the wall with a jam, and they shot at Feng Zixian. Feng Zixian was already running fast, and the 2 sharp arrows shot in front of him made him quite frantic, but fortunately, he had already prepared when he saw the sword marks left by the sword-backed young man before, so it was not too bad. What's wrong? In the critical moment, Feng Zixian showed his exquisite physical skills. The physical coordination he trained for 3 years was perfectly presented at this moment. He tilted his head slightly to avoid one arrow, and faced the other with great power. The arrow that shot towards his abdomen, Feng Zixian, slammed into his abdomen at the same time, and the arrow rubbed his abdominal muscles and passed through, tearing the clothes on his chest. Ding ding! With 2 crisp sounds, the arrows pierced the bronze wall without stopping, and the powerful force nailed it to the wall. Feng Zixian, who had survived a thrilling disaster, stopped and looked at the lacquered black arrows nailed to the bronze wall. He couldn't help but be afraid. This power is not something ordinary bows and crossbows can shoot, even if the Magi Stir is not watching. Under the circumstances, it will be embarrassing. Feng Zixian stared at this long passage. There was a bright light in the distance, which should be the exit of the passage. However, this passage that usually can be passed through in less than a minute is now full of organs and dangerous in Feng Zixian's eyes. Everywhere. Feng Zixian remembered in his heart that he who promised Lin Zixian and Lin Zixuan would catch up with the sword-backed boy and surpass him, how could he stop here? Immediately his hands crossed his chest and began to seal, shadow clone technique. After a few muffled bangs, 10 more Feng Zixian appeared in the passage. Looking at this deep passage, they started charging one by one to sweep the human body. 10 shadow clones rushed towards the passage one after another and ran towards the exit, while the deity of Feng Zixian stayed in place, staring at every move of the passage. After rushing out 100 meters, the 10 shadow clones finally encountered the trap. Several organs were exposed on both sides of the wall, bursting out a large amount of hot flames, and the two shadow clones were accidentally burned to smoke with a bang. Dissipated away, while the remaining 8 shadow clones quickly avoided. Continued to walk, the ground suddenly collapsed, revealing the rows of iron spears underneath. Although the sharp spearheads were removed, the fall was equally tragic. 3 of the 8 shadow clones were killed again, and the remaining 5 shadow clones were only 300 meters away from the exit. Fengziken watched from a distance without moving, and once again commanded the 5 shadow clones to open the way forward. In the section less than 100 meters away from the exit, the shadow clone suffered the greatest loss. Seeing that it was about to reach the exit, an invisible wave passed by, and the 5 shadow clones suddenly changed their expressions and made 5 bangs. Turned into smoke, the whole army was wiped out. Fengziken closed his eyes and absorbed the information and feelings that came back after the shadow clone disappeared, and muttered, "The last thing that appeared is illusion." These 10 shadow clones were originally the cannon fodder he used to explore the way. There were not many chakras at all, so they would dissipate as soon as they encountered an attack, but their sacrifices also found a safe way for Fengziken. Fengziken suddenly opened his eyes and rushed to the exit of the passage. Because he had the experience of exploring the way with the shadow clone, he flashed past before the flame appeared, and the traps on the ground naturally became easier. Galloping all the way, bypassing many traps, Fengziken rushed to the last 100 meters, and the invisible illusion swept in. Fengziken ignored him, his strong mental power clung to his soul, and directly resisted the past. Stepped out of the tunnel, Fengziken breathed a sigh of relief. These traps were not a threat to him, but they were too annoying, they were everywhere. If it were Linziken and the 2 brothers and sisters might end up here with hatred. After all, there was no danger in the previous passages. Now there are so many traps suddenly, and they are magicians, weak in body, and I am afraid they will encounter unexpected events. It is too late to activate the magic, even with some defensive means, it will be very embarrassing. But I have left a mark just now, I must be careful, Linzixuan will find it. Fengziken muttered to herself. After regaining his senses, Fengziken hurriedly looked around, and he was relieved to see the sword-backed young man standing on the ring not far away. Fortunately, he had not passed the 4th level. On the ring, the sword-backed young man was confronting a man wearing black clothes and a copper mask. When he saw that he was about to fight, he saw Fengziken rushing out of the passage. The sword-backed youth finally changed his face, and he just got out of the perverted passage. In less than 2 minutes, this guy actually passed the 3rd level of the magical clone. It seems that I really underestimate the world. Thinking of this, the sword-backed youth looked at Fengziken with a dignified gaze. He no longer regarded him as a passerby, but a real opponent of comparable strength. Old Chen's voice sounded again, "Congratulations on coming to the 4th level. This level you have to deal with is not the clone, but the students cultivated by our Star Academy. The students who have reached the mid-level of the magician, defeat them. Or let them say that they admit defeat even if they pass. I hope you can go further. Isn't this a pure clone at the beginning? Changing to a student of the Star Academy means that the difficulty has increased again. After all, there are no ordinary students who can enter the Star Academy. They are all talented students. All kinds of magic are readily available, and the battle rhythm will be well grasped. No, as for the one who was beaten by them, he didn't know how to fight back. All in all, the difficulty coefficient has increased significantly from the 4th level. Fengziken watched the sword-backed youth on the ring against the black-clothed students and watched the show with great interest. The young man with the backsword seemed to know that Fengziken was watching him fight, and no longer hesitated. He drew his sword abruptly and slashed towards the black-clothed student. The golden grudge engulfed the sharp sword aura and slashed towards the black-clothed student. The black-clothed student could clearly feel that an astonishing sword intent had firmly locked himself in and prevented him from escaping. The black-clothed student was shocked and not surprised. With a sudden stop with the staff in his hand, he summoned 3 earth walls to block him in front of him. He is an earth magician. The sword energy slashed on the earth wall, and the powerful power dissipated after cutting through 2 earth walls. UU reading www.uukansha.com. Black-clothed students seized the opportunity, raised the staff, and released a 7th level magic ground thorn surgery. The earth trembled for a while, and a thorn suddenly rose from the feet of the young man with the back sword, and a sharp violent stabbing at the young man with the back sword. The young man with the sword back was not in a panic. The sword master's cultivation gave him extremely agile skills. One back jumped 5 or 6 meters, avoiding the thorn. The black-clothed student was obviously very accurate in grasping the timing of the battle. After the ground stab, a meteorite fell from the sky and hit the young man with the back sword. The sword-backed boy was obviously dissatisfied that he was crushed and lost the opportunity, especially in front of Fengziken, so he saw the huge meteorite hit and burst out a bright golden vindictiveness, a heart-palpitating sword. The mind spread, and the black-clothed student was breathless. Mysterious sword skills, cut the sky and the earth. A huge golden sword aura seemed to fall from the sky, slashing straight toward the meteorite. This time, the sword-backed youth obviously used an extremely powerful method. The golden sword aura broke through the meteorite stone with a force like a bamboo, and the power still slashed towards the black-clothed students. The death-like threat made the black-clothed students understand to overcome the huge gap between the two. He immediately shouted helplessly, "I admit defeat." At the moment he shouted the 3 characters of admit defeat, a vast force came from the sky, which directly obliterated the amazing golden sword aura, and at the same time Chen Lao's voice sounded, "Fourth pass, pass." The sword-backed boy looked up at the void, turned his head and walked down the ring. Fengziken looked at the sword-backed boy in awe, and said, "What a powerful sword aura, my name is Fengziken. I don't know if I know this brother's name." The sword-backed boy paused, looking at Fengziken, hesitating flashed in his eyes, but he still said, "My name, Jianwuji." Chapter 17, Warrior Martial Arts Jianwuji. Fengziken smiled, being able to say his name. It seems that he has finally paid attention to himself. "If you don't mind, wait for me, let's break through together later. I believe you also want to challenge the 9th level." Fengziken invited. Jianwuji looked at Fengziken, did not speak, but stopped when he wanted to move forward. Fuji Chen showed a slight smile, turned around and jumped onto the ring, leaving a sentence, "It won't be long." There was a student with the same black copper mask on the ring. He looked at Fengziken who came up, bowed slightly and took out his staff. Fengziken replied, and the smile on his face gradually disappeared. Since he wants to get Jianwuji's approval, he must naturally show his absolute strength, otherwise no matter what you say, people will not believe you. The black-clothed student murmured a word, and with a violent wave of his staff, a huge flame snake violently rushed towards Fengziken. It was obvious that the black-clothed student was a fire magician. Fengziken's eyes were faint, and his hands quickly formed a seal, took a deep breath, and suddenly blew out, "Feng Dun Vacuum Jade." Several sharp wind-breaking sounds sounded, the invisible wind blade swept past like a tough silk thread, and instantly cut the flame giant into pieces. The powerful wind escape force was still terrifying, and quickly swept towards the black-clothed students. The black-clothed student obviously did not expect that the power of this magic would be so great, and in a rush, he only waved his staff and summoned a wall of fire to block him in front of him. The wind blade cuts across the space on the wall of fire. The students in black only felt a shocking force passing over. The wall of fire couldn't resist and broke apart, but the chakra of the wind blade was exhausted and turned into one. The breeze blew on the face of the black-clothed student, causing him to secretly say, "So dangerous." But before he recovered, Fengziken rushed over quickly, thunder raging on his right hand, as a sharp sword, and a unique jiji sound was made among countless electric lights, like 1,000 birds. Chi-ming, ear-piercing, and eye-catching. Lei dun lei che. The black-clothed student was taken aback. This trick came so quickly. He had no chance to react at all. He could only watch the terrifying magic stabbing him. Between the electric light and flint, a powerful force came from the void again, covering the black-clothed student. Feng Zichen had long known that old Chen would make a move, so after sensing this mighty force, he took advantage of the trend and stabbed the student in black. With a loud bang, Lei Che's powerful penetrating power threw a long shallow ditch on the ground, and that power surprised the few people present. Not to mention that the black-clothed student who had escaped a catastrophe called out abnormality in his heart, even the old Chen in the dark was also moved by it. This power definitely reached the peak level of the Magi stir. It seems that the first 8 levels of the Sky Star Road cannot constitute him. It's a threat, and only the 9th level. Well, there is that Jianwuji, who is also extremely strong. It seems that this time the God's Domain training camp will add 2 places. Feng Zichen jumped off the ring and came to Jianwuji. At this time, Feng Zichen did not ask him how he felt, whether he was qualified to form a team with him, because he saw a trace of Jianwuji's always cold face. Shock. Jianwuji was indeed shocked, even he felt threatened by the move just now, which is enough to show that Feng Zichen's strength is not weaker than himself, and it may even be stronger. Jianwuji looked at Feng Zichen's gaze and couldn't help showing a trace of war intent. Although he understood that Feng Zichen was very strong, the innate war intent in his bones was still boiling, and a trace of sword intent rose up, as if it was going to skyrocket up. But he quickly suppressed the desire to fight again. Here is the extremely dangerous Star Road in the Star Academy. I don't know how many difficult opponents are waiting behind. How can I waste power here? Very good, pass the 4th level, Feng Zichen, Jianwuji, I hope to see you in the 9th level. Chen Lao's slightly relieved voice came from the void, which lasted forever. Feng Zichen and Jianwuji both bowed slightly towards the void, glanced at each other, and started to walk towards the bronze passage leading to the 5th level. Inside the passage, both of them knew that this passage would be more dangerous, so they were fully prepared. Jianwuji was able to avoid attacks from the aisle by virtue of the sword's sovereign level physical fitness and powerful strength. And Feng Zichen also displayed a physical fitness that is not weaker than Jianwuji. Following Jianwuji, and avoiding attacks from time to time, Jianwuji's eyes twitched. For Feng Zichen, this is quite a bit of an advantage. The practice is really speechless, but nothing is said. Feng Zichen felt dark and refreshing. The various organs on the road that Jianwuji had flashed broke out. Feng Zichen, who walked behind him, was much more comfortable, and he only needed to avoid those attacks, instead of trying them one by one. Up. With the preparation and strength of the 2 people, they arrived at the 5th level within a few minutes. The same huge ring, on which stood a student in white and silver mask, holding a long spear, and the sharp head of the gun was in the light. Under the shining sen ran cold light. Sensing the undisguised strong fluctuations of vindictiveness in the body of the white-clothed and silver-masked students, he has reached the peak of Wuzong. Jianwuji didn't say anything. He leaped into the ring with a vertical step, and his calm eyes didn't contain a wave of waves. In his eyes, as long as his strength did not reach the holy realm, it would not be a problem. Just use his divine sword to break all obstacles. That's the enemy. The white-clothed student slammed on the ground, and there was a loud bang. The figure flew towards Jianwuji like an arrow. The spear in his hand was like a dragon, bursting with cold light and stabling towards him. The strength of the force made the air. There were several bursts of air. Feng Zichen nodded as he watched from the audience. This student of Tianxing Academy is really extraordinary. This student has been trained in spear skills, has good combat power, and is absolutely invincible at the same level, but it is a pity that he is facing it is not an opponent of the same level, and it is doomed to fail. Just as Feng Zichen thought, In the face of the powerful attack from the white-clothed student, Jianwuji did not evade, pulled out the divine sword behind, the golden vindictive erupted, a sword stabbed out, accurately found the entity in the shadow of the gun, and directly the sword was blocked, the lower sword body was shocked, and the student in white involuntarily stepped back. Sword Wuji gains power and does not forgive, a bright golden sword aura cuts out, and the momentum is like a rainbow to the white-clothed students. The white-clothed student's eyes were piercing, and his vigorous anger suddenly erupted, and he poured all his spears into his hands, pierced one shot and pointed at the golden sword aura. Spirit-level pinnacle martial arts, spirit-shattering spear. The tip of the gun filled with white grudge rippled with powerful waves, and one shot was placed on the golden sword aura. The sword Wuji's unfavorable sword aura was directly broken by this move. Oh! Is this the unique martial skill of the warriors on this continent? Sure enough, I can't underestimate it. Feng Zichen watched with a little surprise as the white-clothed student shattered Jianwuji's sword energy with a shot, and said inwardly. On the Star Continent, magicians can mobilize the ubiquitous magic elements between the heavens and the earth, and cast all kinds of terrifying magic. The magic power in their own bodies is actually very small, but the warriors are on the contrary, they can't use the energy of the heaven and the earth. Can only strengthen the vindictiveness in one's body through continuous cultivation, so as to gradually strengthen oneself. That's why the fighting spirit in the martial artist is much stronger than the magician in terms of quality and quantity. They can't use magic, but they can use the same powerful martial skills. That's what the predecessors have created for millions of years. Improved horror skills, it is these powerful martial skills that make the martial artist not lag behind the magician on the overall level, so that the warrior with a high level of cultivation can also make the noble magician be afraid of it. The martial arts are divided into ordinary, mysterious, spiritual, heaven, holy, and God. Each level has 4 small realms of primary, intermediate, and advanced peaks, and the order is clear. The white-clothed students use martial arts unique to the martial artist. Spirit-level martial arts are powerful martial arts that can only be performed when their cultivation level has reached the realm of a great martial artist. In the martial arts, the peak of the spirit stage requires the cultivation of the peak of Wuzong to be used. Very powerful. Jianwuji was a little surprised when he saw it, but it was only a little surprised. After all, did he want any martial skills because of his origin? Not to mention the spirit-level martial arts, Yu reading www.uukaungshu. He had mastered a lot of only heaven rank martial arts, not to mention he had even more powerful bloodline secret skills. Slightly serious, Jianwuji held the divine sword in both hands, with a solemn expression, and slashed it out very slowly and powerfully. At the same time, he moved his feet and displayed his martial arts inch step, instantly appearing in front of the white-clothed student, heavy a sword slashed down, and the pressure was like a mountain smashed down at him, which was extremely uncomfortable. Spirit-level sword skills, heaven collapsed. Sword skill Tianbeng is really like Tianqi, a heavy pressure firmly locked the white-clothed student, forcing him to set up his spear and try to block the sword. But will Jianwuji's intentional sword skills be blocked so easily? The answer is obvious. The sword fell lightly, and the face of the student in white changed wildly, and an unresistible force came from the spear in his hand, almost directly breaking it. The terrifying heavenly sword skill made the white-clothed student fell to the ground and gritted his teeth, and the ring under his feet was shaken open by cracks. A few seconds later, the white-clothed student was finally defeated, was directly bombed out, and vomited blood. Hit hard. Stood up hard, the student in white looked at Jianwuji, with a trace of envy in his eyes, but he was 5 years older than him. Thank you. The student in white said. He knew very well that his opponent had kept his hand at the last moment, otherwise he would have died with the move just now. Jianwuji nodded faintly, turned and walked down the ring. Feng Zichen gave him a thumbs up, winked his eyes, full of smiles, I did not expect that he has been so cold and almost merciless, that he has such a human side. Jianwuji's face couldn't hold back, and he glared at him angrily, and found that this very thick-skinned man didn't care at all, so he had to give up and roll his head. Chapter 18, Artifact Grass. Juvenile sword teased the Xiaobingshan man slightly. Feng Zichen was in a good mood, watching another student in white who appeared on the arena again. A flashing technique flashed onto the arena. This white-clothed student is the same as the one Jianwuji defeated before. Wuzong's peak-level cultivation base also makes a long spear, and the strength seems to be the same. It seems that Tianxing Academy also used some snacks in this aspect, Feng Zichen thought in his heart. Seeing that Feng Zichen was on stage, the white-clothed student gave a salute from afar, and the spear in his hand flicked, pulling out a few spears and pointing at Feng Zichen. The smile on Feng Zichen's face gradually dissipated, and his eyes suddenly became dignified. During the 3 years of training in the Fallen Forest, Feng Zichen never despised any opponent. Even if he didn't care about his face, he still beat his heart. It's a bit of spirit. Feng Zichen took a look on his face, as if thinking of something. A smile appeared on the corner of his mouth, almost forgot it. With a grip on the void, a long sword suddenly appeared in Feng Zichen's hand. The long sword was about 3 fingers wide and 3 feet and 9 minutes long. The sharp blade was glowing with a slight white light, and it was extremely extraordinary. It was the first Hokage to appear in everyone. In his eyes belonged to Leng Jun Dashawan's grassy sword. This grassy sword is an artifact obtained after Feng Zichen completed a random task released by the system not long ago after holding up a stick of incense in the hands of the demon ape. Originally, Feng Zichen was still wondering. Although the grass sword used by the Ashimaru is a very good chakra weapon, how can it be worthy of the name of an artifact? In his memory, only those 6 magic weapons in the legend can be called divine weapons, right? Moreover, the grassy sword in the ninja area was priced at a high price of 200,000 exchange points, which was comparable to the price of ordinary S-rank ninjutsu, which made him even more incomprehensible. However, after seeing the special attributes of the grass sword displayed by the system, he changed his original view. Cultivation, the weapon held by Leng Jun Ashimaru, one of the 3 ninjas in the Naruto world, has excellent chakra containment and flexibility, and is extremely sharp. After the system is strengthened, it has 2 special attributes, and its power is greatly enhanced, and it can be ranked as an artifact. Special Attribute 1, Sharp, damage increased by 10%. Special Attribute 2, Breaking Strong, ignoring 50% defense. There are 2 special attributes. One is more perverted, needless to say, Fengrui, the damage is increased by 10%, that is to say, as long as you hold the grass sword, it is equivalent to raising your overall strength by 10%. This is for Feng Zichen said it was a great improvement. The second special attribute is even more perverted, ignoring 50% of the opponent's defense, weakening half of the opponent's defense in disguise, and increasing its own damage. This is undoubtedly a nightmare for the monsters who are very perverted in physical magic defense like the devil ape. Weakening half of the defense power almost cut his strength by 30%, and I am afraid that even some of the sanctuary mid and late stages the World of Warcraft dared to challenge him. After seeing these 2 special attributes, Feng Zichen had to admit that the pheasant sword after the system was strengthened was indeed worthy of the divine weapon. Looking at the faintly gleaming cold light on the slender blade of the Cultivation, Feng Zichen looked forward to it. He eagerly looked at the student in white who was watching him warily not far away, quite eager to try. Jianwuji looked at Feng Zichen from the stage and suddenly took out a long sword. He couldn't help being surprised. Isn't this guy a magician? Why did you take out the sword now? Could it be that he can still martial arts? Feng Zichen did not know the astonishment in Jianwuji's heart. Under the stage, holding the magical grass sword in his hand, his figure moved and quickly rushed towards the white-clothed students. After all, it is the physical quality of the shadow-level cultivation base. The fast speed makes the white-clothed students' hearts shocked, concentrating on alert. Before the person arrived, Fengziken first raised the grass-like sword in his hand and instilled the chakras. The special performance of the grass-like sword increased these chakras by 10%, and then turned into a blue sword energy, and cut to the white clothes. Trainees. The white-clothed student did not dare to neglect, the spear in his hand flicked, like a dragon, violently stabbed at the blue sword energy. Spirit-level martial arts, piercing dragon thorns. On a long spear, the fighting spirit was restrained and hidden deeply. It was not until the moment when it came into contact with the sword energy that it exploded with amazing power. The tip of the spear was pointed on the sword aura, and the strong penetrating power directly shattered the sword aura. The white-clothed student's spear kept running, and once stabbed at Fengziken, the spear pierced through the void, roaring like a cloud-breaking dragon. Fengziken didn't panic at all. The blue light of the grassy sword in his hand was released, and chakras poured in large quantities. After the grassy sword was increased, the power reached a terrifying point, and he pierced the tip of the gun directly. Ding! There was a crisp sound, the needle tip faced the wheat, and the sharp tip of the grassy sword pierced the spear tip, and an invisible shock wave erupted. The white-clothed student's complexion changed, and he only felt an extremely sharp power coming from the spear in his hand. This force even faintly rushed into his body along the spear, extremely dangerous. Fengziken was pleasantly surprised to feel that his chakras showed a lot more power after the Cao's Hegian increased, and every attack he took with the Cao's Hegian almost had the power of grade B ninjutsu, replaced by Xin Chen. The saying on the mainland is that every sword has the power of spirit-level martial arts, which is extremely terrifying. Is this the power of the artifact? Fengziken's heart was full of pride, and he didn't care about physical swordsmanship. He slashed it with one sword and one sword. This made the white-clothed student's heart miserable. Every time he resisted a sword, he would consume a lot of fighting energy and the strength of his body. The impact is getting bigger and bigger, and he can hardly bear it. I surrender. The student in white couldn't help it finally, desperately blocking a sword, and found that he could barely hold the spear, immediately jumped out and shouted. Fengziken stopped, breathing calmly, eyes full of joy. This grassy sword is really powerful. If the opponent is the kind of warrior with strong defense, it would be better to handle it. Go down and teach him to be a man. Fifth pass, pass. Old Chen's voice came from the void, seemingly surprised. Fengziken walked off the ring happily, came to Jianwuji, and said, "How about my swordsmanship?" "Very good." Jianwuji silently looked at Fengziken's expression, "Come and praise me," and spit out a few words, "Too bad." Fujishin's proud expression froze instantly, a bit like a holding his throat. "Where it's rotten, where it's rotten, don't blame me for turning your face if you don't give a decent reason." Fengziken looked at Jianwuji indignantly. The more he looked at him, the more he owed it. Jianwuji ignored his gloomy expression, and said to himself, "You can also be called swordsmanship? It's purely about holding a good sword and slashing around. Is there a bit of tricks? Are the moves consistent?" Fengziken was speechless. Indeed, he had never learned swordsmanship. It seemed that the swordsmanship was superb. The students who fought in white clothes had no strength to fight back. In fact, they rely solely on their own strength and the powerful power of the grassy sword. People can't see it, but when placed in front of Jianwuji, a master of swordsmanship, he can see through it at a glance. Jianwuji looked at the speechless Fengziken, and for the first time felt an exuberant feeling in his heart. "For a little bit, tigers don't make cats, you treat me as critically ill. Dare to show swordsmanship in front of me? You were still playing in the mud when I started learning swords." Seeing a trace of pride on Jianwuji's unchanging face for thousands of years, Fengziken's teeth tickled, wishing to choke him to death. After fighting for a while, the two obviously got a better relationship, and immediately walked towards the sixth pass. The fourth stage of Tianxing Road. Looking at the empty arena, Lin Zichen and Lin Zixuan looked at each other speechlessly. The two of them went too fast. It only took a few minutes to disappear. Sure enough, the strength of Brother Feng is far more than that. I am afraid that he has reached the peak of the magician. Lin Zichen sighed. Lin Zixuan's beautiful eyes also showed a trace of admiration. Looking at the bronze passage behind him, she couldn't help but said with a little fear, if it weren't for the mark left by the windy brother, it would have been dangerous just now. Lin Zichen was also a little surprised. He shook his head and said, the traps set up by the Sky Star Academy are too insidious. The passages of the previous levels are not dangerous. So many traps are suddenly laid. Who can react? I don't know if Brother Feng has caught up with the young man with the sword back. Lin Zixuan muttered to herself as she looked at the passage leading to the fifth level. Okay. Lin Zichen looked at her a little strange sister and was startled. He couldn't help but said, little sister, you reading www.uukaungsha.com, why are you so, care about Zichen? Lin Zixuan's beautiful little face suddenly showed a faint redness, and her beautiful eyes looked at Lin Zichen with an annoyed look. Hate, brother, what are you talking about? How can you arrange your own sister like this? Lin Zichen scratched his head and smiled. Actually, it doesn't matter. As long as you are satisfied with your sister, I will definitely support my brother. Haha. Brother, you still said. Haha, shy. No law. Compared with the Lin family brothers and sisters who still have leisurely jokes, the 16 teenagers who are still struggling in the third stage are uncomfortable. Facing the magical clones in the realm of fantasy sect, most of them are only in the early stage of the magician or in the realm of Wuzong. They really played very hard. Sorcerer is okay. As a magician, he needs a relatively strong mental power, and he has some confidence in resisting illusions. Those Wuzongs who are not strong can be in trouble. Warriors don't pay attention to mental power, and defense against illusions. It's not as good as the magician, so no one has passed the third level. In a secret room on Tianxing Road, Chen Lao sits leisurely on a chair. There are several magic screens in front of him. The 20 people who have broken through on Tianxing Road emerge from them. On the first screen, Chong in the front, the two of Feng Zikenjian and Wuji. On the second screen are the Lin family brothers and sisters. On the last screen there are more people, there are 16, and they are still suffering in the third stage. Those who are struggling. 3 grades, 3 results. It seems that only the pair of dolls can enter the sanctuary training camp. Old Chen watched silently. When the two of Feng Ziken were about to enter the 6th level, he stood up and smiled with satisfaction. Is the 6th level? It seems that it is time to call all those old guys over. Chapter 19, Star Presbyterian Church. In the Sky Star Academy, on a high tower, a cold middle-aged man wearing a magic robe of Xingyi was floating cross-legged in the air, closing his eyes to practice. Huh! The cold middle-aged man suddenly opened his eyes, a pair of dark eyes faintly roared with a hurricane tornado, fleeting. Why does old man Chen have leisure to send me a message? Isn't he busy with this year's enrollment? The cold-souled middle-aged man took out a luminous jade, a little surprised. At the same time, the blue light flashed coldly. Disappeared. In a training camp of the Star Academy, a burly man who was loudly reprimanding the senior class warriors gave a sharp stop, glanced at the gleaming communication jade around his waist, muttered a word in his mouth, and turned and disappeared from the students. In the eyes, only the students who had escaped were left with a sigh of relief. In the secret room deep on Tianxing Road, the empty stone table is already full of people at this moment. On the first stone table sits 2 young old people with cranes, and on the left is a kind, smiling old man. Grandpa, he is wearing a fiery red magic robe, and 4 golden flames are clearly printed on his chest. The other old man is an old woman who looks like she is 80 or 90 years old, but her eyes are still clear, like water rippling. The old woman is also wearing a water blue magic robe with a print on her left chest. 4 drops of golden water droplets and an indescribable majesty spread, making everyone present dare not be rude. On the right side of the stone table, there are 3 senior members of the Star Academy. One is Leng Chen, who manages the classes of the lower grades. He is wearing a light blue magic robe with 2 small golden dragon scrolls on his chest, showing him the cultivation of the sage in the middle stage. One is Zhan Tian, who is in charge of various classes in the upper grades. He is burly in shape and his face is full of heroic colors. His black martial arts suit is embroidered with gold threads, which looks gorgeous and majestic. The 3 golden swords on his chest show him the cultivation base late Wusheng. Finally, there is a glamorous woman with enchanting body and mature temperament. A fiery red dress tightly wraps her plump and mature body. Her beautiful and attractive face is full of smiles, and those ecstatic electric eyes seem to have there are endless temptations that make people feel reluctant to move away. She is the charm in charge of the sanctuary training camp, an illusionist, and her strength has reached the peak of the late stage of the illusion. On the other side of the stone table sat Chen Lao and an indifferent middle-aged man. The indifferent middle-aged man was extremely powerful and reached the peak of the late stage of martial saint. He is in charge of the law enforcement team in the Star Academy, with a high position. And sitting in the top position are the 2 deputy deans of the Star Academy, Yan Wen and Shui Yi. Both are strong in the peak of the sanctuary, and they are only 1 step away from the gods. Here, almost all the high-level combat power of the Star Academy has gathered, which can be called the presbytery of the Star Academy. In the secret room, Zhan Tian was the first to stand up, and said, "Old man Chen, what can't be said clearly in the Jade transmission? You should call all of us here? This situation can hold a meeting of elders. I'm busy cultivating. At a critical juncture, I just rushed to call me to come here. Don't blame me for giving you a dimensional blade without giving a reason." Leng Chenayuyo said with a dissatisfied expression. Chen Lao He smiled, looking at the impatient few people, with mysterious faces, just not talking, watching the hot-tempered Zhan Tian almost couldn't help but want to punch the old thing in the face. Everyone stay at ease, brother Chen, let's go. What do you want me to ask this old bone to come here? The vice president of Yanwen, who has not spoken, said with a smile. Originally, they wanted to be anxious. Their old Chen gave Zhan Tian a look that was good for you, and successfully provoked his anger. Then he said with satisfaction, "Everyone knows that this year is the old man and I am in charge of the admissions exam. Fortunately, the thing is, I found a few very good seedlings, which are worthy of cultivation." Speaking of Mr. Chen, he tuned out the magic screens. When everyone looked at it, they saw that a large number of people appeared on the first magic screen. Facing the magical power of the realm of Phantom Sect, the avatars failed one after another. Shaking his head, these teenagers can barely be assigned to upper-class classes. It is fortunate that they can become Magisters in the future. Where can they be trained? Looking at the second magic screen again, the senior officials of the Star Academy were surprised. Did you pass the 4th level? And it doesn't seem to be too strenuous. It seems that there is hope to enter the sanctuary training camp, but 2 good seedlings. But just these 2 sacred realms have mobilized to call almost all the members of the Presbyterian Church. Isn't it a little fuss? Leng Chen and the others looked at the old man in doubt, but they saw this old guy with a smug smile, full of joy. The 2 children. Deputy Dean Shui Yi spoke for the first time, with a slightly surprised voice. Leng Chen and the others looked at Vice President Shui Yi in doubt, but saw her staring straight at the 3rd magic screen. Her eyes flashed brightly with surprise on her face. Leng Chen and the others quickly looked at the 3rd magic screen. They saw that there were also 2 teenagers on the screen. They looked only 17 or 18 years old. They were walking through the tunnels everywhere with ease, and the strength of that mechanism turned out to be the passage to the 6th level. What? These two children are almost reaching the 6th level? That is the entrance level of the sanctuary training camp. Leng Chen said with some surprise. The beautiful and moving charm heart Huan Sheng spoke for the first time, and the clear and beautiful voice faintly carried a temptation sound, touching heartstrings. More than that, looking at their relaxed appearance, I am afraid they will not stop at the 6th level. Everyone was horrified, and the vice president of Yanwen smiled leisurely and said, he, are you the talent of God's domain? Brother Chen gave us a surprise this time. Old Chen looked smug and laughed. Yes, these two are the talents of the gods that I believe are not defeated by Lei Xian. Up to now I have not seen them use their full strength. I believe they can challenge the 9th level, enter the God's Domain training camp. The atmosphere in the secret room suddenly became enthusiastic as Chen Lao's words fell. A pair of eager eyes looked at the two Fengzik and Jianwuji on the magic screen. After observing them left and right, they felt that it was impossible. Haha, this is really the Lord God blessing our Star Academy. I am worried that there are not enough ace students in the Star Academy in this 3 Academy exchange competition. This has brought us 2 talents from God's domain. Now we finally don't have to worry about it? Zhan Tian yelled excitedly, looking at Fengzik and Jianwuji on the magic screen with more and more satisfied eyes, and even the old man Qian Chen was pleasing to his eyes. Old Chen was rather humble at this moment. This is the 6th level. It depends on whether you can pass the 9th level. But the smile between his eyebrows shows that he is confident. Leng Chen and others also saw Chen Lao's insincere words and secretly slandered, but they didn't care about his sorrow in their hearts. After all, Chen Lao found 2 talents in God's domain for the Tianxing Academy and contributed a lot. These 2 children have reached the 6th level. Let's take a look at their performance. Deputy Dean Yanwen said slowly, eyes full of expectation. Mizan Huansheng and the others nodded, and looked at the 2 people who had walked out of the magic screen. Tianxing Road, the 6th level, Fengziken and Jianwuji walked out of the passage. Fengziken looked back at the seemingly harmless passage, and couldn't help but mutter, how do I think this passage is more difficult than the level? Jianwuji nodded in agreement. The dangers that appeared in the passage just now were indeed difficult, and it was really difficult to pass. Fengziken looked at the huge arena of the 6th level as usual, and couldn't help being speechless. I can guarantee that the gatekeeper of this level must be an illusionist. Maybe it is still in the realm of illusion. Fengziken, who has broken through 5 or 6 levels on Tianxing Road, has summed up experience. The magician is the first to go, then the warrior, and finally the illusionist is the end. The difference is only the strength of the strength. Jianwuji did not speak, but looked at the triumphant Fengziken with a contemptuous look. Want you to say? Who knows? Fengziken took a deep breath, resisted the urge to give him a spiral pill, and looked at the other end of the ring. Sure enough, a woman in purple clothes with a graceful figure appeared, wearing a golden mask. www.ntlnovel.com. Lian, lifting slightly, stepped onto the ring. Feeling the mysterious power that pervades the purple-clothed woman, Fengziken laughed and said, sure enough, I am a illusionist, or a beauty wuji. Should I let you go on stage first? Jianwuji turned his head proudly and snorted, no, you go, I am not interested in fighting women. Fuji Chen grabbed Jianwuji's neck and said with a smile, what, shy? Don't be afraid, I won't laugh at you. Jianwuji became irritated, and the golden grudge shook. He threw away his hand and walked aside. Fengziken didn't care, and shouted from behind, hey, if you don't, I'm going to. Jianwuji responded coldly, go on, where is so much nonsense? Fengziken's intimate behavior of not treating himself as an outsider just now made Jianwuji very uncomfortable, but he didn't know why. There was no rejection at all, but a little warmth came to his heart. This special feeling made Jianwuji feel flustered, and his tone became cold subconsciously. Feng Zixian was taken aback, mumbling about what he was doing so fiercely. He turned and walked onto the ring. At the same time, his eyes slowly closed, and suddenly opened. A pair of dark eyes suddenly turned into blood-red riding wheels. The strange and powerful fluctuations greatly increased the vigilance of the purple-clothed woman's heart. Deep in the secret room on Tianxing Road, looking at Feng Zixian, whose eyes have changed significantly, Leng Chen said softly, "Is that the power of his blood? It looks very unusual." Mizan Huanchen's beautiful eyes are full of inquisitive meaning, and he whispers, "Is the power of the eye pupil's bloodline related to illusion?" Chen knew the power of Feng Zixian's bloodline a long time ago, and couldn't help but laughed. "Do you know if you just read it?" Chapter 20, Power of Blood. Feng Zixian's blood-red riding wheel eyes looked straight at the purple-clothed woman, and the three pitch-black gojade in the pupil slowly rotated, exuding a breathtaking wave. The purple-clothed woman looked at the strange riding wheel eyes. A trace of fear inexplicably surged in her heart, but she was suppressed in an instant. This girl is an elite student of the sanctuary training camp of the Star Academy. How can she be a new student? Scared. Thinking like this in her heart, the purple-clothed woman suddenly felt a boost, and the powerful illusion within her body surged rapidly. She raised her hands lightly, formed a strange seal, and launched an attack suddenly. Illusory skill fantasy. A mysterious magic power quietly burrowed towards Feng Zixian's brain, and at the same time a strong feeling of lethargy spread, making Feng Zixian almost want to sleep directly on this ring. But there was a sudden coolness in his eyes, which made Feng Zixian suddenly aroused, secretly surprised. Is this the illusion that has been passed down on the star continent for nearly 1,000,000 years? Sure enough, it is extremely delicate. If it hadn't been for the riding round, this trick alone would be enough to make him feel better. The vigilant Feng Zixian in his heart jumped forward and quickly rushed to the purple-clothed woman. The illusionist was not very physical. Once he was close, his advantage would be greatly increased. But the woman in purple also knows her own weaknesses, so how can she not pay attention to it? Seeing Feng Zixian rushing over at an extremely fast speed, she didn't panic. Her eyes faintly dazzled, and she stared at Feng Zixian suddenly. Boom! Feng Zixian only felt a powerful mental force impact in his mind, as if a sledgehammer hit his head fiercely, making him unable to help his body. Is this the mental shock that illusionists often use to deal with martial artists? It's really powerful. Feng Zixian was surprised. I heard that illusionists not only use illusion skills, but also are good at various mental attacks. False, just. Feng Zixian's eyes were bright, and the powerful mental power quickly eased the pain caused by the mental shock. Feng Zixian rushed towards the purple-clothed woman at a faster speed. It was the mental shock of this intensity. But it can't stop me. Feng Zixian is not one of those warriors on the mainland. He does not cultivate mental power, only the body. He is the only ninja on the star continent. He is proficient in ninjutsu, physique, and illusion. Putting here is an unprecedented magic fighting spirit and illusion. The peerless genius of fellow practitioners has absolutely no bad spiritual attainments. How could he be brought down by this level of mental attack? The purple-clothed woman was obviously also a bit surprised, but soon she didn't care, because with such a little time to prepare, her best illusion technique was already done. At the moment the purple-clothed woman's handprint changed, and she whispered, "Illusion chaos." Illusory magic Ranchan is a real 9-level illusion, and it can't be compared with the previous fascinated gods. The 9th level illusion can even be tricky for the average Wuzun peak powerhouse. It can be said that it is a big trump card for women in purple clothes. The powerful 9th level illusion eroded towards Feng Zixian, and Feng Zixian suddenly raised his head, and a pair of monsters staring at the purple-clothed woman, with a smile on the corner of his mouth, finally waited. Illusory rebound. The powerful pupil power of the riding wheel's eyes revolved extremely fast, and when it sensed the illusion attack, it suddenly exploded and directly bounced it back. The illusion and chaos that bounced back enveloped its original owner, the woman in purple, making her stiff, and she suddenly felt mentally disordered, and her brain was out of her control. This is my illusion, chaos. This guy easily bounced back my best illusion intact. How could it? The purple-clothed woman was shocked. She was level 9 illusion. How strong is this young man? Fengziken gasped slightly, and disappeared. It was really difficult to rebound such a powerful illusion. I had to exchange it for the kaleidoscope to write the will, and the pupil power was greatly enhanced. Otherwise, it would be a little questionable whether it could bounce back successfully. Walked to the purple-clothed woman and looked at her horrified eyes. Fengziken's hands flashed with thunder, a finger was pointed in front of her throat, and she smiled and said, "Give up." The purple-clothed woman just released the illusion and chaos. She was locked in the throat by Fengziken with a finger, and she was silent for a while before she gave up. The ethereal voice was like a clear bamboo, and it was impressive to hear it. Fengziken put down his hand and nodded with a smile on his face and said, "I have accepted." The purple-clothed woman took a deep look at Fengziken, did not speak, turned, and left the stage. Jianwuji watched Fengziken step down, and the eyes that had changed back to the dark pupils, gritted his teeth. This guy really has hidden strength. Those eyes just gave him a very dangerous feeling. He knew that it was a powerful bloodline, not even worse than the bloodline of the sword god passed down by his family. In the depths of the Tianxing Road, the elders Wu, several senior officials of the Tianxing Academy looked at Fengziken's eyes more intensely. The power of the bloodline of the sacred product can easily rebound the 9th level illusion. This is probably the power of the bloodline of the sacred product. On the Star Continent, a large amount of bloodline power has been passed down since the ancient barbaric era. After hundreds of thousands of years of evolution, there are also levels. The power of low grade, medium grade, high grade, heaven grade, sacred grade, and the most powerful and terrifying god grade bloodline has 6 levels in order. The power of low grade middle grade bloodline is very ordinary, while the power of high grade bloodline is more powerful and relatively rare. And the power of the celestial bloodline is very precious. A celestial bloodline is enough for a magician or a martial illusionist to raise their strength by a level. The bloodlines of the saints are extremely rare and powerful in the entire continent, and most of them are passed down from generation to generation in the family model. Their abilities are strange, but they are all extremely powerful, like the bloodline of the sword owned by the Jianwuji family, which is one kind of extremely powerful blood of the saint. The true cultivation base of Jianwuji theory has only reached the early stage of the sword sovereign. Perhaps relying on the various powerful martial arts possessed by the family can possess the mid-stage or even the late stage of the sword sovereign's combat power, but once he opens the sword god bloodline, then his strength is there will be a qualitative leap, and the peak power of ordinary Wuzun will not necessarily be his opponent. This shows that the power of the blood of the saint is terrible. As for the most powerful bloodline of the gods, that is the power that only exists in the legend. It is said that the blood of the gods is powerful enough to make a sanctuary strong to defeat the strong god standing at the top of the pyramid of the continent. It shows how powerful it is. The deputy dean of Yanwen smiled happily, and his eyes full of approval when he looked at Mr. Chen. "Brother Chen, this time you really found a wicked wizard for me at the Star Academy. If the dean knew about it, I will be very happy." Chen Lao smiled happily. "Why does the dean care about this little thing? I also happen to be catching up." The other elders looked at old Chen with envy. Why didn't they have a talent in God's domain when they presided over the admissions? "Oh! Look, the other kid with the sword is also starting the assessment." Vice President Shui Yi pointed to the magic screen and laughed. The elders quickly looked at the magic screen, only to see that the sword-backed young man stepped onto the stage with a cold face, and was confronting another young man in purple. "Huh? This kid seems to be quite complicated." His temperament and his sword give me a very familiar feeling to the old man. The vice president of Yanwen looked at it, and said leisurely. On the magic screen, Jianwuji drew out the sword behind him as soon as he came on stage, and cut it off with a single sword without stopping. The golden sword aura whistled away, and the sharp sword aura seemed to evoke the hidden pole in the heart of the vice president of Yanwen. Deep memory. Chen Lao didn't sell it this time, and said softly, he is called Jianwuji. Sword? Is it, from that clan? The vice president Yanwen suddenly flashed in his cloudy eyes and asked slowly. Old Chen nodded, and said in a deep voice, it should be right. The vice president of Yanwen sighed and said nothing. A few other elders who are slightly younger are all confused. Sword. Which family? What does it mean? But they didn't ask much wittily, obviously this is a long old secret. Yu reading www.yuyuganungsha.com. Seeing Jianwuji, who was frowning on the magic screen to resist the powerful illusion of the purple-clothed man, approaching step by step, the vice president of Yanwen recovered his calm face and said with a smile, it seems that they have passed the 6th level. What arrangements do you have for the 7 passes? Because few people on Tianxing Road can pass the 6th pass, there is no fixed assessment for the next 3 passes, and several elders have to arrange an assessment on site. Chen always thought for a while, his eyes lit up, and he said, Warcraft, it's better to use the Tier 9 monsters captured by the Academy as the assessment content in the 7th level. Tier 9 monsters. The elders were surprised, would this assessment be too difficult? We must know that the combat power of Warcraft is inherently stronger than that of humans. If experienced veterans are good, these 2 dolls, only 17 or 18 years old, are extremely powerful, but in the eyes of the elders, there is nothing real. The experience of fighting with Warcraft, this is easy to go wrong. The vice president of Yanwen deliberated carefully and did not speak. Old Chen knew their concerns, and said immediately, since you want to know their true strength, you have to administer some ruthless medicine. As for the safety issue, this old man personally go sit in town and protect their safety secretly. Vice President Yanwen nodded, and finally agreed to the suggestion, then use Tier 9 monsters. Brother Chen, the safety of these 2 gods' domain talents is in your hands. Old Chen stood up and said solemnly, don't worry, I won't let them happen. Tianxing Road, Level 6, with the sword of Jianwuji resting on the neck of the man in purple, this assessment is finally over. Fengziken and Jianwuji did not wait much, and ran directly to the location of the 7th pass, and old Chen had already arranged the 7th pass, hiding in the dark waiting for the arrival of the 2.